Hey Rebels, my name is Matthew Barton, and I'm the host of the Rebellion Brewing podcast. Saskatchewan's craft beer scene has reached a tipping point, and everything that has been building for the last 5 to 6 years is now about to unleash the full potential of the local beer scene. When I say local, I mean Saskatchewan. I'm not just talking about the availability of new styles or increased consumer choice. I'm talking about the convergence of multiple things, all happening at once, from the rise of canned beer at the local level to the impact of provincial and federal regulations. There have been economic studies connecting craft breweries to the revitalization of local neighborhoods and the development of local agricultural supply chains ranging from barley, wheat, lentils, hops, and now hemp. And those profits are staying right here in Saskatchewan. I'm talking about the emergence and growth of a multi-million-dollar local beer industry that is employing people locally, buying locally grown crops, one that is investing millions in our community, and it's primarily being driven by local business owners who have a vested interest in making Saskatchewan a great place to be, not just a great place to be from. Today, Rebellion CEO and co-founder Mark Heise is going to help me unpack all of this, and we're going to talk about the state of Saskatchewan craft beer. So let's get into it. Mark, welcome to the show.
I'm always excited to talk about this. This is one of my favorite topics.
How's your day going?
It's great. We just finished shoveling a whole bunch of dirt around, and now we got to put our thinking caps on and think a little more strategically and try and tell a good story today.
Was it 14 yards of slag we just shoveled around?
I think Paul said 17. I don't know what it was. It was a lot. I don't know anything about measuring yards of anything, but it was a lot. We're all sore. We're going to sleep well tonight.
Let's start at the very beginning. Let's start with the current state of craft beer. What's the lay of the land in the craft beer scene?
Well, in Saskatchewan, it's very exciting, very dynamic. There's a lot of moving parts. I think the really exciting thing for me that I'm most proud of is that most of the breweries in Saskatchewan I would consider very good friends. I talk to probably over half of them on a weekly basis, which is pretty crazy. And I never really thought about that until I started looking back at my text messages and emails and my phone calls. That's pretty kind of neat. And most of those folks, I was friends with them when we were all just home brewers, and we were just like, we just wanted to make really great beer and share our knowledge with each other and say, try this and try that. And we still do that. But we've turned it into a business and an economic driver and creating jobs. I feel really good about that. I'll happily take some part of the credit for helping contribute to that. So you're seeing a really, I would say, a united front on that, and that doesn't mean we agree on every single issue, but yeah, we're all working towards the common good. I think we trust each other and we feel comfortable with each other because we know where we've come from, and we're not big corporations with secrets or underlying motives and whatnot, and so that really fits into our values here at Rebellion, right? About just honesty and integrity and passion, and that if you stick with those, you can be really successful. And so I think maybe, I'm not sure if we're leading into the right spot or not, but in terms of like when you say a tipping point is when you come out of the gate and with those ideals and all these weird beers, that doesn't mean that there's massive lineups of the general public that it automatically think that what you're doing is fantastic. It takes time to build up that momentum, and this is kind of where we've gotten to today.
When we bring a sour beer to market, nobody goes, "What's a sour beer?" anymore.
No, so I was looking back. I mean, we've been releasing sour beer since we started at Rebellion Brewing. We were doing kettle sours a long time ago. We were doing traditional sours a long time ago. No one knew what it was. People mostly hated them. And now people are messaging us constantly, when's the next sour coming out? And, I don't think I ever imagined that in my wildest dreams. I think it goes back to another podcast we did. And again, before before the current era of craft brewing in Saskatchewan came along, some of the other breweries that attempted to come out, they wanted to play it safe because, well, we don't think consumers will really like that stuff, so we better be pretty lame and uninspired. And that was just an insult to the people.
A blueberry syrup beer?
Yeah, like nobody cares, or pseudo phony baloney organic beers that are just completely boring and terrible that nobody cares about and we're not organic in any way, shape, or form.
If we had to estimate what the share of locally produced craft beer in this market is, what is it?
Well, I'm anxiously awaiting the new stats from the SLGA based on 2019 numbers, just because I'm have nothing better to do. I was actually looking at the numbers for 2018 yesterday, and in 2018, I believe the market share of Saskatchewan craft beer was a whopping 3.2%, which is still diddly squat of nothing. But it's a huge year-over-year growth, and I think you're going to see that number starting to shoot up a lot faster.
That's about a 3 to 5 year growth period for our craft beer industry locally. What does a mature marketplace look like?
Right, so the average across the United States, where craft beer is, for the most part, has been popular all the way back to the mid-90s, they're running at about 15%. So we've got a lot of catching up to do. We've got a lot of growth to do. So the future looks bright. And if we could just be average, wow, like people are patting us on the back right now for what we've accomplished. If we can go from 3% to 15%, like look out. We're going to do some serious damage here. And when I say we're only at 3.2%, that's not meant as an insult or piddly, because again, there is a lot of evil forces at play that don't want to see people like us exist, that don't want to see us succeed. There's barriers to entering all sorts of the market, and so to get to 3.2% out of nothing from these crazy weirdo people that have limited marketing budgets and all this stuff. We've done exceptionally well, and that's a lot to be proud of and celebrate. But there's still so much more for us to achieve.
What is some of the crap that's standing in our way? We fight against a little bit of this greasy nonsense. What is it that's happening?
Well, usually it's in the alcohol industry, it's usually regulatory. A lot of it's still outdated models that we're still suffering from the effects of prohibition that happened 100 years ago. And I'm not just that's not hyperbole. I love the history of alcohol and regulation, and we're still stuck with a lot of the issues from back then. And then the other one is the predatory, unfair business practices of huge multinational corporations, which again should be no big surprise to anyone that pays attention to what's going on in the world, and the 1% and the billions upon billions of dollars that they've amassed. And they're not really in the mood to give up even a 1 percentage point of their market share. And so they play pretty ruthless games. It's referred to as inducements in the liquor industry, where they basically just throw around cash to tie up taps and to tie up shelf space and all of that sort of stuff.
Wait, so you mean they'll pay somebody cash to say, this tap is mine, regardless of whether the beer is selling or not? This is my tap for now.
Yeah, a real common tactic is that they may have a popular brand, and so they'll tell a bar owner or whatever that we'll put that beer on tap, and we might give you a kickback on that beer. If you actually look at the price, the actual selling price of their kegs of beer, they're actually more than our price, which is mind-boggling because it costs them pennies to make that garbage. But it's an overinflated price, but then there's a cash kickback for every keg that they sell that brings it back down to a normal price. But to get that, they also want another 2, 3, or 4 taps, and they'll essentially block us out of all of those taps, and they'll just put garbage on there that nobody drinks, nobody wants. It's just taking up space.
But it's not just taps; it's happening on shelves too, right?
Yeah, that can happen as well. Most of the retailers we deal with, we don't have to really face that a whole lot, which is quite nice. But yeah, it definitely happens across the industry. In other provinces, they actually enforce it and they fine the big brewers for that, in the hundreds of thousands of dollars up to millions of dollars. annually, and the big brewers happily pay that because they make that much money. In Saskatchewan, I might have just said that it happens in Saskatchewan, but apparently it's never ever happened here in Saskatchewan because no one's ever been fined for it. So I guess hear no evil, see no evil.
You mean to say that Saskatchewan is finding no one because it's not happening, or because, somebody's just been not paying attention?
Yeah, I'll let the listeners decide what's going on.
Ominous. Ominous. Let's jump into something a little more positive. What's happening with our local farmers? What are we seeing farmers doing now that we have the rise of craft breweries?
Well, you're seeing farmers want to diversify. You're seeing them want to try different crop varieties. Traditionally, before craft brewers existed or came along, their primary concern was yield, not necessarily quality, or not that they were producing garbage. That's not the point, but it was more about the yield. Now we have very specific requirements around flavor and around how it's going to perform when we brew beer with it. We have a higher expectation on the malt. Again, most of the big brewers that are using malted barley, they don't really care. It's just a source of sugar. They're not concerned about the unique flavors or characteristics. They want it as cheap as possible. So very, very different. And so the farmers enjoy that. And they're experimenting with different varietals, different things, different that. We've been out in the fields and seen some of that. That's super, super cool. And it creates niche opportunities and niche markets for them, and they can sell it at a premium price to us and sell it directly if they even have their own malting facility. So Maker's Malt is a good example of that in Rostern. That business didn't exist, and it exists, frankly, because there's now a Saskatchewan craft beer industry. And I wasn't the only one, but I spent a lot of time, several hours on the phone with them, just talking through their business plan, probably 2 or 3 years before they even existed. And I was happy to do it because I want to see these things. And, there's JGL Shepherd Farms, growing hops. I mean, and that's a serious operation. And again, they're very experienced farmers. They're not messing around. And, I fully believe they would not put the money that they've put into a hop farm if they didn't fully believe that this was something worth doing and they could make some money at it. And so that's, to me, that just gave me so much more confidence and to keep going. It's like, we got to keep rolling here because these guys believe in us. They think there's something going on here.
Saskatchewan farmers are not chicken shit operations. They're investing millions in our industry because they know if they can grow something to spec for us, we're going to pay a premium price and we're going to turn into something awesome.
Well, exactly. And we can, people like to joke that farmers are narrow-minded and don't know what's going on. Farmers know what's going on. They pay attention to what's going on around the world. If there's an opportunity where they can make money and do it well and do it respectfully, they want to do it. And so they don't have blinders on. They're well aware of what's going on with the growth of craft beer around the world, frankly, now. And they see what's coming down the pipe and they want in on that. And it's pretty awesome.
I remember talking to one farmer. He was using drones in his field, and the drones were spotting, checking, spraying, doing some real next level cyberpunk matrix stuff to his crops. I'm like, you're the future, man. He goes, I'm behind everybody else. He's like, I'm just trying to keep up. And this is stuff that just completely blew my mind when I saw it. I'm like, this is fucking rad.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic, right? You read about this stuff, or I used to work in IT for many years, and so you're working with typical computers and network equipment, this sort of stuff. But then you see the applied technology and the applied science, and it just blows your mind. And yeah, I mean, I was in awe. I was in awe, and I was so pumped up and energized just from seeing those operations.
It's like physics and agriculture, economics, sociology, ethnographies, political science, all these pieces all coming together to make really kick-ass beer.
Yeah, and I was on some. I've been on some committees looking at economic growth for the Regina area, 10-year plans, and I had the privilege last summer being in the room with these titans of the agricultural industry, and I felt pretty out of place in that room. But they kept coming back to me like, we want to know what Mark thinks. We don't know how does a beer, and this or that. And so it was very flattering. But I said, you guys are the ones doing all the really cool stuff. And I said, just think of me as like your marketing arm. That's literally all I am. I'm just like off on the side, and I'll just like wave the flag and be the cheerleader and be like, go farmers, go. And I'll tell everyone how awesome you are, and we'll make cool beer with it. And the joke with Murad from AGT, who we make the lentil beer with, is I tell him lentils aren't cool, but lentil beer is. And I mean, again, he's no dummy either, and so that's been a huge success, that partnership as well.
Our farmers see the potential. They're investing millions. It's going to put my kids through college, but it's about more than that. It's about living life great with great food and great beer. What is the potential of Saskatchewan craft beer in the next 5 years?
In the next 5 years, I wish I could. I don't have the numbers right on my fingertips, but I always look at what I think is realistic in a 10 to 15 year span. So there's been some studies that have been done. They're getting a little old now, but I would predict that as of last year, the net economic benefit to the province of our craft beer industry was around $30 million. And again, when I'm a big numbers guy, an analytics guy, and predictions, and I think that within 10 to 15 years, with the right conditions and with people getting out of the way and not being a bunch of jerks, we could easily turn this into a $200 million industry. And I would also say that right now we have about 150 jobs that we directly and indirectly create, and we could grow that to about 1,500. That is some serious business going on there, and it's more than reasonable. It's just throw around a number like $200 million. That's not small, but for some reason that doesn't scare me. That just seems normal and realistic. Because if everyone else can do this across North America, well, I'm pretty darn sure Saskatchewan is up for the challenge. So let's roll up our sleeves. Let's have the regulators get out of the way and let us do our thing.
We've danced around it a little bit. What is it going to take for us to get there? What's standing in our way?
Well, so for me right now is 5 years ago, the SLGA commissioned a study with MNP to do a review of our industry. The number one recommendation from MNP was that there needs to be a strategic policy for growing this industry.
What does that mean? What's a strategic policy?
It means that a strategic growth plan, which would have policies around it, which would say, we do envision a $200 million industry, and these are the steps to how we can get there. These are the steps of how we can support this. These are all the benefits to the province. This just makes sense. And so that was recommended 5 years ago, and we still don't have that. So it makes it very, very tough to have conversations with government officials around detailed policy when it's not clear what we're trying to achieve. And so this industry is exploding very quickly. There's also the whole privatization of the retail part of the liquor industry, which has created that's a whole other separate issue, but it throws the SLJ into a tailspin because they're trying to wrap their heads around that, and it all just gets muddled up into a bunch of nonsense that they struggle to see clarity and see a way out of what they're trying to achieve. That's what happens when you don't have a strategic plan. You just keep swirling the toilet bowl and dealing with whoever is yelling and screaming the loudest, or whoever is making the biggest political contribution, or whatever, and it's really hard to see the forest from the trees. So I just keep going back to that, and we need that. We really, really need that to do what we want to do and what we can do. The other real specific policy issue is production levy. So that seems to be a hot topic right now. There's a public petition that was put out on that, actually asking to have production levy completely removed.
Well, let's talk about what is a production levy.
So a production levy, and it is pretty common across Canada. Every province has some form of a production levy. So if you are a local brewery that exists, and basically for every liter of beer you produce, the government feels they have the right to charge you for the privilege of doing that. The government offers no other services or benefits beyond that. It's just their take. It's a sin tax. It's fine.
That's in addition to the other taxes that are already being paid.
Right. We pay all sorts of other taxes. And so we accept that that's a standard. I don't really, I'm not a huge fan of it in general, but it is what it is. And so the production tax here in Saskatchewan is at 17 cents a liter that's what it starts at, and it goes up from there. Our closest neighbors in Alberta and Manitoba are at 10 cents a liter or even lower than that. I've been asking the provincial government for 5 years to go with 10 cents as the starting point and to escalate up from there.
To match our neighbors.
You need to be competitive. As much as it is a grassroots industry, we are talking about investing millions of dollars. And there are some people who are looking for places to put their money. Are you going to put your money into a Saskatchewan brewery, or are you going to put your money into an Alberta brewery or a Manitoba brewery where the profit margin is just that much higher because the taxes are lower? We need to really look at that. And we're not against paying taxes. We accept the need to pay taxes, but this is just a sin tax and a tax upon a tax. It's just a cash grab, plain and simple.
What is the effect of having a higher tax compared to other jurisdictions? What's been happening?
Right. So in Alberta, they introduced a lower tax about 5 years ago. Manitoba introduced a lower tax about 5 years ago. And you're seeing in Alberta, they had about 10 breweries at the time. They're now at about 110, 120 breweries. In Manitoba, they had, I think, 2 craft breweries, and now they're pushing 40. So, you got to do the math on a per capita basis, and we're still hovering. We're at less than 20, which is not bad. But clearly we're lagging behind, and we're clearly lagging behind the North American average on market share of 15% if we're down at 3. Clearly we do not have a regulatory environment or a strategic plan to accelerate that. We're doing very fine on our own, but we could do a heck of a lot better if people would just get out of the way.
So we're looking at an environment where people are not being required to follow the rules, or at least not paying for failing to follow the rules. We're looking at an environment where we need a plan to help us coordinate all these different moving parts, whether it's agriculture, economics, breweries, regulatory regime. We need a plan that unites all these different moving parts so the left hand knows what the right is doing. And then we're looking at a tax, basically a drag on the system that's disadvantaging us to other jurisdictions.
Exactly. And we like to talk there's a great story going on, and there's tons of success and tons of growth. But it's not what it should be or could be, and when you look across government, the Ministry of Agriculture loves us. They love working with us. They understand what we're bringing to the table, the fresh perspective, the passion, the grassroots mode, the grassroots setup that we have. Tourism Saskatchewan, same thing.
They get it.
Yeah, beer tourism is a thing. I know there's pandemic, limited travel right now, but you can travel within your own province. You can travel within your own city and go and visit a brewery. And again, this is nothing new. This is what happens across the rest of North America. And so I don't know why you would want to miss out on those benefits. So yeah, we advocate for that. There's opportunity here for advanced education to create brewing program. Huge opportunities. It makes sense. We already have all this great agricultural research and programs going on at the U of S. What if there was some specific stuff around brewing and to crank out more and more educated, trained brewers? There's a huge demand for that. There's a huge demand across Canada that's not being met, and it won't be met. It won't be caught up for 20 years. So if you're looking to stimulate the economy or stimulate your numbers at Sask Polytech, create a brewing program. Let's get on with it.
Who else is doing it right? Who's doing exactly the right things that we need to help make this industry kick ass?
Well, there's, we're getting incredible support and partnerships. We work with the distillers and the wineries and whatnot. They're all on the same page, trying to accomplish the same sort of things. Regina Chamber of Commerce, the Regina Hotel Association, Saskatchewan Hotel and Hospitality Association, Tourism Regina, Tourism Saskatoon. We work heavily, obviously, with the Warehouse District here and Regina downtown. people get that. As you mentioned, I mean, we have a whole podcast on how breweries can revitalize a neighborhood. Well, they frankly, they do. They attract additional investment and additional growth, and just re-energizing a space. There's tons of data that shows that that's what happens. These are good things.
Within a 2-block radius of our brewery, I'm seeing people with real estate agents touring these previously abandoned buildings that had like broken windows and looked shitty and terrifying, like post-apocalyptic. And now I see these wonderful new small businesses moving in. They're painting them up. They're like glowing and fresh and amazing. It's like, I can't wait to come to the district and see what new thing is going to pop up next.
Exactly, and I'm not taking the credit for that, but you need a lightning rod there of something to get that going. And so even through the pandemic, I've been personally contacted by businesses and investors wanting to buy property at open businesses in the warehouse district. I walk the warehouse district just about every day. Just this week, I've noticed 2 new storefronts that are opening up. That's like insane.
In the middle of a pandemic.
in the middle of a pandemic. We just hired another full-time brewer, and we posted a position for a full-time finance manager during a pandemic.
When we're taking body blows, we're still able to be resilient. We can take those punches and keep swinging back.
Yeah, it's on the upswing, and it's a pretty awesome thing to be a part of. And so again, I'm not trying to say I have some axe to grind or that everyone, should kiss our butt. I'm not asking for that. But I think, there's some folks that do, to a degree, have their head in the sand and they're missing the forest from the trees. And it's not clear to me why, when all you have to do is read any article, which I forwarded to many, many people. You can read any article that explains all of this, that these are good things. And creating jobs and keeping dollars within the province. Let's get on with it.
Who needs to have their ass kicked?
Oh, I don't know. I got my list, but yeah, I think that it's a challenge, and that's where I will when I do have private conversations with people in government, I understand the challenges. I understand the bureaucracy. I understand that taking risks and doing something different is difficult to pay off, and it doesn't always pay off in government. It can make for a short-lived career, but
I don't think that's exactly the reason I didn't last very long.
Again, that's where a lot of my frustration grew, and I did fine in government, but I know I didn't get nearly as far as I probably could have if I would have, just played it safe and kissed butts and that sort of thing.
When you didn't rock the boat?
I just couldn't live with myself to be like that. I had to be. I'm really about just being really blunt and clear and honest. Hopefully respectful at the same time, and I hope I earned respect with the folks in government. But yeah, I think that's where. So I'm not frustrated by it. It's actually a great opportunity because I do get to talk to a lot of different people. We had the audience at the Prime Minister's office. I mean, that's kind of cool. Not many people get to talk to them, and so you just try and keep telling your story. I'm glad that I'm telling the story. Honestly, we've looked at hiring lobbyists and playing that game, which is dirty and gross and disgusting. But why would I hire someone to not speak truly and honestly and passionately? That makes no sense. Maybe that would fast track some things. Basically, you're just buying favor. I don't know. I couldn't sleep at night. I absolutely consider it. 'Cause I'm like, I'm naive. I'm like, what is all this lobbying nonsense about? And I'm not trashing anyone that is a professional lobbyist. There's that construct exists, and so be it, right? There's money to be made, and everyone needs a job. But me personally, I just like, I got to do it on my own terms. And if I succeed, I succeed. If I fail, I fail. At least I know I gave it my best, and I wasn't trying to pull any games.
I guess I kind of want to pull back a bit and clarify my position. I used to be a public servant. When I worked within the public service, you hear a lot of that, well, the public service is lazy and they're entitled and shitty. I knew tons of great people who were brilliant, and it felt like they were constrained by the system. And when they had great ideas or they were doing a really great job, their hands were constantly tied. They couldn't move as fast as they wanted. They couldn't deliver services as quickly as they wanted. And there's a real penalty for change or being the nail that sticks up. You get hammered down. And one of the things that always kind of stuck with me, one of my favorite bosses, I won't say his name because he wouldn't want me to, but he said to me very early on, executive government, political government, has the engine of a lawnmower and the brakes of a Mack truck. It's very, very difficult to get things moving. It's very, very easy to clamp down and say no. So I want to be clear when I'm talking about the public service. I have an affection for the people and the friends that still are in there fighting the good fight. And I don't want to have this blanket anti-government or anti-public service sentiment coming through, because that's not where I'm at. I'm more like, let's identify the good people, let's celebrate them, but the barnacles can get scraped off the ship and kiss my butt.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. Again, I don't like to come across as a complainer or bashing on anyone. And I spoke to a minister a few weeks ago, and and again, I mentioned that I don't have any personal dislike of anybody that I've worked with on this stuff. I understand why this doesn't always float to the top. Again, I worked in IT in government, and IT has all sorts of challenges in government. It's not flashy, it's not cool, and if there's any extra dollars, are you going to spend it on additional hospital beds or on some more computers? Well, probably on more hospital beds. And as a taxpayer, I can't really argue with that. So it's again, I understand why looking at the craft beer industry in Saskatchewan maybe doesn't float right to the top, especially during a pandemic. But at the same time, it has been 5 years, and we need to move forward.
To follow through, to just give an extra kick to what you just said, we're going to be coming out of this pandemic, and we're an industry that is a growth industry. We're working with local industry. We're keeping money local. We're paying taxes local. It just makes sense to me that if we want to come out of this pandemic swinging, if we want to go with a winner, I know we don't like talking about picking winners and losers, but pick a frickin' winner, and it's us.
Yeah, and that's the story we're trying to tell right now is, there's going to be a ton of struggle coming up. But yeah, there's this, working with us, there's nothing but growth potential. The money stays here. The jobs are here. It's just such an easy one to do. We just got to get everyone's heads wrapped around it and moving in the right direction, and then look out. Look out. We are ready to unleash, the real thing. Again, everyone says how fantastic we are right now, and sure, that feels great, but I personally, I don't feel like we've done anything. And just watch out what would happen if we were actually able to just run free.
Let's talk about beer, man. You've been sipping it the whole podcast. It's our brand new Patio Tarty. 3% ABV, I should say. Tell me about it.
Right, so Patio Tarty is a really fun little beer. It got its name through a Facebook, just social media. We opened it up on all social media. Let our fans suggest names, and we chose Patio Tarty because we thought it was just kind of fun. 3% kettle sour. We didn't really do anything else to it. There's no fancy additions or anything.
No lactose.
No lactose. People talk about it kind of as a lemony, which is typical when if you don't add anything else to a sour beer. It's kind of just got that lemony tartness, and it's only 3% alcohol, so kind of in the range of like a Berliner Weiss. That's exactly what summer is all about, and a lot of folks still get confused that they think something sweet is refreshing. Whether it's a beer or a soda pop, it's not refreshing. What's refreshing about it is that you're drinking it ice cold and it's carbonated. So it's the fizz and the at temperature of it. Sweetness is not refreshing. Something like sourness or a bitterness, that is what's actually refreshing. It cleanses your palate, all that stuff, and it kind of actually makes you salivate, especially on the sourness side. That's what's going to rehydrate you more than anything. So it's just a great, easy drinking beer. Again, as we've been talking, I've just kind of just kept drinking it and enjoying it. It's fantastic, and I can't wait to see what everyone else's response is to it.
3% is low, but 8% is high. And I feel like every time we release a really high alcohol beer, we have people complaining that it's too high alcohol. And when we released and we said this is going to be a 3%er, people were complaining it wasn't high enough alcohol. But we have a range of options. What's the philosophy or theory there?
Again, I think it's about leading with your chin. We're Rebellion Brewing, so we're going to put out a 3% beer and blah, 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 blah. But it's really just about, we obviously want to put out beer that people are going to enjoy, but a lot of times it's just, hey, what do we want to put out? And there isn't a whole lot of beers right now in our market that are at 3%. So we're like, well, let's just do it. And and so what comes with the territory of being the first one is some people just can't wrap their head around it. And that's fine. And it's not the first time that it's happened, and it won't be the last. And so, again, I don't want to upset anyone or let anyone down, but that kind of comes with the territory. You're going to break a few eggs when you upset the apple cart, or I don't even know what kind of comparison, what words I'm using at this point, but yeah, I think everyone knows what I'm trying to say.
When I drank this one, the very first sip, it's not a spank on the mouth. It's very easy going.
Right. So we make our beer sour. I don't necessarily care for those bracingly sour, bracingly dry beers. There's a place for those, but they're very, it's just very limited appeal. And even myself personally, and again, not that I like sugary, sweet, heavy beers, but I'm really about balance. And that doesn't mean it needs to be lame or always somewhere in the middle, but I'm really trying to just balance the flavors. And so to sit here and just casually sip away and enjoy a beer like this while we're having a conversation, that's kind of what you're looking for. But where it's like, each sip, you kind of got to be like, whoa, you kind of takes your breath away. That's not really that pleasant. It might grab people's attention and they'll be like, ooh, that's sour. But so what? Just like, ooh, I made the most bitter beer in the world, or I made the highest alcohol beer in the world. Good for you. But is it balanced? So that's just kind of our philosophy here. And, I think we do a pretty darn good job of that on a regular basis.
This beer feels to me like you need to be out in the sun on a patio, socially distantly hanging with your friends and just crushing it.
Yeah, exactly. Patio Tardy. I mean, it was a great name. It was a great suggestion. I hope people are able to get their hands on it. We didn't can this one. It's only available in kegs, so typically through growler exchanges and whatnot right now. Maybe a few bars or restaurants will put it on tap for us. But seek it out. Come and give it a shot. Again, like you mentioned, I don't know. I could probably easily drink a whole growler by myself and be quite happy over a afternoon.
I know my wife would like this one. Get some chips or some barbecue. Just sit back, chill, and eat it.
I'm really proud of the beers that our brewers have put out this summer. The range and just so dialed into that idea of summer drinking. There's just something that's just feels so good about that, about being out, whether it's in the sun or barbecuing or whatever. And obviously we can't have giant backyard parties or have get together with all of our extended family, but I think more than ever we really value that time that we can spend with someone, or even just enjoying the solitude of being by yourself. And I'm not saying you should, it's not about wallowing in misery, but sometimes it's about just being present and just enjoying nature or the outside and just being calm and sipping and enjoying a good beer can be a really good part of that.
Well, Mark, I want to thank you for your time today.
Yeah, it was always great. It always goes by fast. And look forward to a great summer of enjoying more good beer.
Rebels, thanks for listening today. If you have any questions or comments about this episode, be sure to join us on our brand new Facebook group page, the Rebellion Brewing Podcast. The Sask craft beer scene is always changing. I'm going to do my best to keep featuring all the new local beers coming out. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Untappd so you don't miss out on a single thing. Thank you for joining the Rebellion.